Hello again to your sacred space. Let's start today by finding our anchor. Place your hands on the two centers of your power, your heart and your gut. Take a breath with me, not a performance breath, but a real one. Let this one reach all the way down to where your roots meet the earth. Don't try to change the breath, just feel it. The lift of the ribs, the settling of the spine. You are here. You are held. Now, keeping your hands where they are, I invite you to let your gaze soften. Your jaw and your shoulders relax. We are going to acknowledge the room that is holding our body right now. Look around, not with the eyes of a critic or a decorator, but with the eyes of a guest. Observe the light around you. Is it sharp? Is it filtered? Notice where the shadows decide to rest, on the corner of a table, in the fold of a curtain. These shadows are part of the architecture of your peace right now. Listen to the room. Now, with your eyes gently closing, if that feels right, notice beyond the sound of my voice. What is the house saying? The hum of a refrigerator? The distant muffled rhythm of traffic? The settling of floorboards, perhaps? Recognize these sounds as the background noise of your survival. They are proof that life is continuing all around you while you pause. You aren't practicing in a vacuum. You are practicing in a living, breathing environment that has agreed to be still for you. When you feel the edges of the room and the edges of your skin meet, you realize there is no gap. You belong in this space. You have a right to the air in this square footage. Take one more breath into that realization as we transition into this beginning. Welcome to the breath of liberation. I am your host, Suks, and today we are looking at the nervous system as an archive. We often treat stress as a personal failure, a glitch in our individual wiring. But what if that glitch is actually a transmission? What if the tightness in your chest or the way you brace for impact is a story passed down through our blood? As an extension of our last episode with KD, today, once again, we look at how the giants of colonization left their footprints in our biology. We're exploring how coloniality shows up in our bodies as a hardness we didn't ask for, but were forced to inherit. I am joined today by my co-traveler, Nicola Griffiths, a breathworker whose practice centers women of color, specifically around rest, rootedness, and reconnecting to their lineage. We're here to talk about what it means to breathe through historical waste, not just manage the day to day. She is a Black woman and a mother living and working in the UK. And she brings all of that, the motherhood, the body, the inheritance, into every room she walks in. Nicola, welcome to the Breath of Liberation. I am so glad you are here.
Hi, Suks. Thank you so much for having me. It's just an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. Before the world starts asking things of you, before the history and the work, I'm wondering, what is that first moment of the morning like for you? Is there a quiet window where you are just Nicola before you are a mother or a practitioner?
Oh, that's a good starting question. It varies, I think, is the best answer to that. It varies a lot. And I'm trying to practice being more intentional about how I begin my day. But inevitably, I have a 12-year-old child, so we're up and out trying to get ready for school. But I think increasingly I've begun to start my day just even with a couple of breaths, even if it's just one, knowing that that's for me before I tend to whatever else is coming up for the day. And when there's more capacity and I can be even more intentional about it, then maybe there's a few more than one breath. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, before we get into the work, I want to get to know you a little more than we did get to know each other in the pre talk. So, tell us where you grew up, what the feeling of that place was, not the postcode perhaps, but the texture of it all. What did home feel like in your body when you were small, younger?
You've got all the juicy questions today. Ooh, home was warmth, I think. And fresh baking. My mum cooked a lot, and we were really lucky with how we grew up and her being so present. So it's something that has been handed down to me. I like to try and be as present as I can for my son because that's something that I enjoyed and grew up on. And so when I was small, what did it feel like? It felt like being nurtured, I think, from that regard. And where I grew up is interesting because that felt very different. We were one of a few Black families in a very white area in the Midlands. And my school, I think it was primary school was predominantly white. Secondary school, again, predominantly white. So that tension has always been present. What I was experiencing externally to what was happening in the inside of my home and with family. And so it's interesting that now the work that I'm coming to do is kind of like an inverse of that. And we can talk about that more.
I'm imagining the landscape of all of that. The baking definitely got me, excited, even though we were talking about your morning and I'm sitting in my night at the moment in India. The baking definitely got me excited. So tell me, growing up um, as a Black girl in the UK, you already mentioned there were very few families there. Was there a version of yourself you felt you had to leave at the door in certain spaces? A quieter version, a smaller version? And today, when you're looking back, where do you think the real one would go while she was waiting?
I think it's kind of created a multifaceted version of me. I What you were asking the question, I was trying to reflect. And I don't think I felt at the time that I left a version of myself. I think at the time it's just what I knew. that was my reality of the time. But reflecting as an adult back, I could definitely see that there was kind of like who I was with my friends and who I was with my family and extended family. And sometimes the two would overlap, but often there were different spaces. I always used to remember like thinking about having a boyfriend or a future husband or whatever. I was like, how can this person operate in these two spheres in the way that I've had to operate? You know, how will I ever meet a person who can straddle both of these worlds that I occupy? And you know, fortunately, I have found someone, and we don't straddle as much as perhaps I used to when I was a younger person. But I think there were definitely like two halves of my being, and things like going to see my nan or my nan and granddad, or going to see my other granddad. My nan passed when she was quite young, so my other granddad, and he was in a predominantly black area in Birmingham. And you know, the shops were different. They're sort of either Afro-Caribbean shops, African produce. There was lots of Indian shops with Sarah. It was so the landscape visually was so different to this town that I grew up in, which was kind of much more you know, British high street. So definitely having these two kind of I don't know what to call them really, but these two modes, if you like, and having to sort of shift between the two things.
That's interesting. I'm reflecting on what you started with, how you said at that moment you didn't know you were doing it. And now when you reflect, these are the moments that came up. I'm really glad to hear that there have been people, your partner, as well as more people, I imagine, in life that you have found where it doesn't feel like you have to split those parts up. I can only wish for that for everyone who lives. Honestly, it's people similar to us. Community is a huge part of all of this work as well. And I'm wondering how you found your way to breath work. Because for most people, there's the first time they try it. And then there's the moment they realize it can be something completely different from what they thought. Um, were those the same moment for you, or did that understanding come later?
So my story with breathwork is slightly convoluted, but I'll try and keep it condensed. I found breathwork during the pandemic, as I feel like a lot of people do. There was lots of free offerings and lots of things to keep people sane during that time. And I did a couple of breathworks, and one in particular that I did, it just took me out of myself and into a zone that I didn't even know that's what was going to happen. So one, I didn't know that that was a potential. I just kind of was very gung-ho and just went into this kind of, oh, I'm doing breath work because, you know, it'd be really relaxing, and, you know, we've been indoors. It'd be really good to do something for me internal, for myself. And so I kind of just bobbed into it, not really knowing the power of breath work. And so I had an experience where it was very sort of space, universe, galactic. And at one point, it scared me. It kind of like, I felt like I was going to dive into something. And I hadn't anticipated that that's what could happen with the breath. And that's what happened for me in that moment. And I sort of had to pull myself out of it. And I was kind of blown away by how powerful it was. Scared and blown away by how powerful that was just from breathing. Because I was just breathing. I just changed the pattern of my breath. I was laying in my bedroom, nothing else had changed. And it kind of slightly freaked me out, but slightly intrigued me at the same time. So I kind of did it intermittently, and then nothing like that happened again. And then that was 2020. So fast forward a little bit, and I start going through perimenopause. So I'm 51. Yeah. So I start going through perimenopause, and there's shifts and questions that I'm asking of myself. There's things that I'm looking to support how I'm feeling. I wasn't feeling great. And so I was looking into things, and I was thinking about breath work. I was also looking for something that I could do to offer out to others, because in that search, I was realizing what I was looking for was so expensive. The things that looked amazing to me were not accessible financially. And I felt overpriced. And I felt also nobody looked like me who was offering what I could find, at least here. And that bothered me. It kind of bothered me. And so when I was looking for something for myself, but I also was looking for something that I could offer out, because I wanted to move out of being the support role for my husband, and I'd done homeschool with my child. I was looking for a shift. He'd gone back to school. I was looking for something. I remembered the power of that experience, and the curiosity and the sort of feeling that it left me with. And so I started then to do more research into breath work. And I was like, this is kind of awesome. This is kind of awesome. And everybody can do this. There's not a restriction on, some things, you might not have the flexibility, or you might not have the strength, or you might not have the accent. Everyone is breathing to some degree. So this can be done to some degree with most people. So I started to look into things, and then I came across Hannah, and that's how, the story begins. I think it's when I found her, because again, when I was looking for training, I was seeing people that didn't look like me, and this wasn't cool. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I want to be in an environment where I'm not the only person of color. I want to be taught by somebody who gets where I'm at. And when I came across her, when I opened her webpage, oh, my heart sang. Really, I was like, oh, yes, this is it. This is it. And I remember saying to my husband, Roger, look at this woman. Look what she's offering. Decolonial breath. But what? I was so excited. So yeah, and that's when I reached out. And then, as they say, the rest is history. So yeah, and it was quite a quick turnaround between me finding her. It was only a couple of, maybe 2 months until I started training. So yeah.
That sounded like really sweet full circle almost, because your experience started with just trying something new with just the small intention of, I want to do something for myself. And it led you to discovering something that is so deeply profound, and then to finding Hannah, and all of her offerings. This is still a course we're doing, which is 2 years long. Even the Fireside Wednesdays that we do with her every month have been very intense for me a lot of times, I feel. In fact, those feel even more intense than my 2-year course does sometimes, because there's just there is something tying all of us together. And that is that we come from a land of color and heritage and culture that is all tied into the same lineage, I feel. Yeah.
100%. I think, unfortunately, because the fireside happens when I'm doing the school run, so I can rarely make it, which it's really sad. But I did attend it when it was during my course, because the timings were different. And it's a very powerful space. It's a very different space. And the things that feel relevant and welcome, I'm not saying they don't feel welcome in mixed spaces, but it's how you feel sometimes about sharing some of the things that come up and that you might be processing in mixed spaces, and just knowing that there was that space for us every so often, and that things that may have come up during the course or just in life in general could be discussed amongst people of colour was incredibly powerful and helpful, actually, and supportive, very supportive. And I think maybe, I'm even just thinking about it now, maybe that's sort of like seeped into what I'm offering now, actually, the power of that space and how held I felt within that space is partly what could have, created some kind of impetus to do what I'm doing.
Would you like to take us a little bit through what you are doing? I feel like we did that in the pre-talk, but we haven't talked about it with anyone listening.
Sure. So I'm going to speak quite a lot now. Yeah. So during the course, I think you're probably around that time where there's a lot of reflection on your lineage, on ancestry, and it stirred up quite a few things for me. I've grown up here. My parents are from Jamaica, and my husband's from Trinidad. He grew up in Trinidad. Actually was born here, and then he went to Trinidad when he was 2. But his formative time and his whole persona is that of a Trinidadian man. And so there was a lot of things that were coming up during that time in the course where I felt really unrooted and unsettled. And when talking about lineage and ancestry, I couldn't really grasp or get a hold on what that meant for me in that context. Yes, I know my parents and grandparents. They know their my great grandparents. But beyond that, it was, who knows where I'm from? West Africa somewhere. I don't know. And so it came with this real feeling of being unsettled and a bit adrift. And I started to coin it as feeling untethered. But through those regular breathworks, actually, that we had to do as part of the course and the fireside, it started to occur to me that actually I am breathing the air that those before me have breathed. I am breathing the air that my grandmother breathed, that her grandmother, and so on and so forth. And when you keep going back, I am breathing the breath of those who were wherever I hail from. And so in that, I'm connected. In that, there's breath. And that breath, there's it's like the idea of a pre-colonial breath, right? Like that holds us all together. And that gave me such comfort, knowing that I might be here, and I might be like under the systems, under the conditioning of colonial, I don't even know what to call them, colonial, so many words are coming to mind right now, but just under this kind of colonial framework, let's call it that. But I'm still so very much connected to this lineage. And so I was able to use breath to tether me, and it gave me such a sense of being anchored, whereas I felt before that I was just all over the place, floating. And that comfort, and again with those fireside experiences and being held within the group that was for women, people of color, and it did end up being women of color because we were mostly women in that group, yeah. And it did something different, and it's probably the thing that I was looking for when I was looking for some support for myself when I mentioned about perimenopause and I was not feeling great. But I think the thing I was looking for was the thing that I received through that breath and through that exploration. And so when we got to the point in the course where we had to begin case studies, I was very curious about the idea of looking into how it might be for others who, if I provide a space for women of color, would they have the same experience as me? Or not the same, but would they receive the intention of the space as I did, or would it be very, very different? So that was part of the thing that I was looking into for my case studies. And so I did an in-person group and I did an online group, and it was resoundingly positive, and people's experience of the space and being held in a space of colour meant that they could experience the breathwork in a totally different way. There were different things that came up for the women. I did women as well. It was a women-only space. There were different things that came up for the women, and many of them hadn't realised the impact that a space for women of colour specifically would give them. And I'm just going to keep talking. So one of the things that became resoundingly clear, as again, I use that word because it was so apparent, was the need for rest, the deep, 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 deep need for rest. I mean, people were falling asleep, which can happen with breathwork when you first start. But it wasn't about fatigue. It wasn't about, I'm tired because I didn't sleep. It was about this deep-seated exhaustion that is present for many people of colour as they navigate systems that are not made for them. And I don't think many of the women had really had time to reflect on the weight that bears and how heavy it is. And when you give space to that, what can happen? So I created a course framework to hold certain conversations that allowed the participants to explore different aspects of what that might look like. So I called it the Mother Series because, as you said in the introduction, I was a mum, so I was bringing myself into it. And this idea, like we spoke about, this feeling of being nurtured, we spoke about that, about my childhood and, you know, how I like to, what I'd like to think that my son thinks in years to come, that there was a sense of nurturing. But I think in a space where you can feel nurtured, where that is encouraged, or your very presence is welcomed in that way, I think it does something, it shifts something. And the women that participated, many of them said they didn't realize how much rest they needed. They didn't realize, I think in one session I said something like, can you invite, or can you give yourself permission to rest in this breath, or something like that. And they were saying how that was quite impactful because they hadn't even thought about the idea that they don't give themselves permission to rest. And that life has us so busy that the idea of resting for resting's sake is so removed from the kind of urgency culture that we're part of. And that really sits with the work of Tricia Hersey and Nap Ministries, and rest as a kind of act of resistance. And so all of that was tied up in the work that I've sort of, for myself, looking at my lineage, finding that breath, finding a way to tether myself. And then in my in me feeling more tethered, being able to open that up to others, to offer a space of nurture, to offer a space of rest as it became, and to explore what it meant to be in your own body in these different ways. So each week we went through a different part of the body. For example, it might be the mother tongue as a concept. Yeah, not necessarily as language, but as a concept. What does that mean to you? Where does it sit? And so we would look at a part of the body as well. So the throat, what's sitting in the, what's there. And in the breath work that we did, it would invite the participants to really take the breath into the throat and to explore and to become curious about what's there. And so again, a lot of the women in the group were like, I realize how much I've had to swallow, how much I've had to hold what I've got to say. And whether that's cultural through family dynamics, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's under this kind of colonial framework and not being able to be present as a person of color, or for me as a Black woman, it just opened up lots of different conversations. And so to get to your point of the question, that is why now I feel it's so important to open a space where this work can sit at the intersection of embodiment exploration, breath as using the breath as a resource and an exploration, thinking about breath as a tool for us to connect with our lineage and ancestry, because some of us don't know what that looks like. And the piece that it gave me, perhaps it can do something for somebody in a similar way, or they find a different route with their own breath and their own past histories and stuff.
Well done. Take a sip of water. Oh, that was beautiful. I'm so glad you went on because, any question that comes up here is just space for a conversation. I want to get to know you. I want to get to know your journey of breathwork, and that's what we're here to do, to talk about that. So, yeah, please take all the time you need for any of the questions that come up ahead as well. Yeah, that was such a beautiful journey, that you do these sessions, that something that you felt lost about kind of led you to it. And I hear you about the fireside sessions. I think that's exactly what I was trying to say that time, about how that space is just different from how the course runs. The course takes you through so much through the 2 years, of course. It's a long time as well. The training to be a breathwork facilitator course. But the fireside, it feels like a space to decompress. It also feels like a space Hannah's experimenting a lot with, to allow genuine emotion to just flow through how it's showing up in that day. And honestly, with the condition of the world we're in right now, and we're here many times in the history of humanity, we've been here many times. We're really in the thick of it right now, though. It is one of those times. And at such a time, to have groups like these where you can meet as a person of color, then as a woman, because each of those comes with its own layers, I think that's beautiful. So I'm really glad that you're doing this. And I also hope to attend one sometime, actually. That would be really exciting. Now,
I would love that. I would very much love that. And that's part of me getting into an organized framework for myself, is to be able to offer things with consistency online. So I've done some bits online, but I want to set something up where people that are not in my locality can also attend. So I think it was in the pre-talk I mentioned that I have a small group that I run here where I live for women of color. And again, it really reaffirmed a lot of what I was thinking, as the case studies did, Because sometimes you can feel like, is this just me? Is this my experience of it? Would other people have a similar experience, or would it resonate with them in a similar way? And so the case studies was a bit of a test, really, to see if it did, and it did. That was such a rich experience. I could do a whole other podcast on that experience itself. It was such a rich experience, and out of that, I've set up something locally. And again, every time that I might be feeling a bit like, oh, you know, is this the right thing? Da, 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 da. And I go and I do a session with these women of color that have taken this time out of their, everyone's busy, everyone's got their stuff, everyone's carrying things, but they've chosen to come to this session, and I get the opportunity to be with them in this container, if you like, and support them. It blows my mind. It really blows my mind. And it just speaks again to how much of this we need, how much, and each session, even though I am in a supporting role, I am benefiting from it also. It's not just because it's not a giving thing. It's more like I am also benefiting from it, The last session we had in particular, I think everybody came in a bit gloomy and a bit, holding a lot. Everybody left lighter. And that was testament to the collective energy, the collective breath, the collective holding, and the support that was there, and that foundational understanding of what was there, because it's a group of women of color in a space for women of color. And there's just so much there that's already present without saying a word. And then when somebody has something to say, it resonates because perhaps you're experiencing something or have experienced something like that similarly yourself. So these are the things that I think, for me, hold such importance in where I want to take the breath. It's really giving people different routes in, and this is one of the ones that I've found that really helped me, and I want to offer back. So the kind of breath as a resource, breath as language of bringing us back to pre-colonial times, breath as access to that deeper exploration, but the deeper exploration into the body, but what the body's holding. So therefore, the body and its archive, the body as an archive, what is living in us that we don't have the opportunity to access on the day-to-day when we're doing the school run, for me, or whizzing around for others. It's like, what is there that can support us, that might tell us more about ourselves, that might connect us, that might help us be informed as to who we are now, and what we might need, and how we can move forward and move through things. So yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The body as an archive, because we are already holding all of it. It's just about who is sitting and uncovering it and who isn't. And that's pretty much everything we will be talking about today. So that's a great, introduction from you to what we'll be doing. I also found it very interesting that you called it the mother. It was one of the few things I knew about you through our interaction before we sat down for this conversation. And it's something that has been coming up for me a lot as a conversational topic at large. I think the more I've dived into healing spaces, the more I've realized how much the current structures of patriarchy had turned me away from the idea of motherhood and not wanting a child. And so much of that comes from patriarchy instead of an actual disdain of that role, is what I've been realizing. Um, and I'm a 32-year-old woman who, is still out there, um, and has grown up in this patriarchal world to come to a spot saying, no, I don't want a child because, but those becauses, so many of them are societal. They're not actually what I imagine the world needs or how it could be a kinder place. None of that comes in the lieu of that. So, my, I think, curiosity right now is towards that part of the journey. I would love to know your journey of becoming a mother. I think that changes everything in any way. It changes everything in the world. The world wouldn't exist without it, but it changes everything within your body, within your being, including how we understand what we have inherited. So I'm to jog your memory, to take you back to some sweet moments. The moment you held your child, did that shift? Did anything shift in you around your own history in that moment?
That's a big journey. So, I'm going to try and make it short. But it took me a long time to have a child, to get pregnant. I was 30 when I decided that, when we decided, like, yes, now's the time. And I was 39 when I had my child. So there was a whole process that we went through. And so it wasn't easy for us to have a child. And he came very early. So he was very premature. And there was a lot of we were scared that we wouldn't be able to bring him home. That was the fear. He came like 3 months early. He was like 6 months old. And he was super, 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 super tiny. He's tinier than a normal baby of that size, of that gestation, sorry. So he was really a gift. And we were extremely lucky to be able to become his parents because it wasn't a given that we would. And so I didn't get to hold him when I had him. I didn't get to hold him. I will never forget the nurse that let me hold him a day or so afterwards because they were supposed to keep him in the incubator. And she was like, well, you are the incubator. So let's do that. And so it was a very, I don't really have the words. As you know, I have a lot of words. But I don't really have the words for that feeling, holding this child who was almost like, it was like trying to hold a butterfly because he was so tiny, he was so light that you could barely feel him. But every time he'd move his hands, it was just this tiny little flutter. And so I felt really blessed that I was able to create a space where he had a degree of comfort in a situation. Like my body was his comfort. Like my actual body is on my skin was his comfort in this time where everything was so difficult for him, so challenged. And I think I've always wanted to be a mother. And so that moment just felt very like the becoming of something that's always been there for me. But it wasn't the way I had thought it might go. You know, you sort of think you're going to have a baby, you'll get pregnant more quickly, you will take the baby to term, the baby will be born, and nobody really speaks to the challenges that can come up with that. And maybe a little bit more now, but you know, people are quite guarded, and that's why I speak on it, because I think that it's really important to be quite open about these things, because perhaps my words might support somebody else who's going through something similar. And so you asked me how it was when I held him, and you asked me if it connected me to my lineage and memory of that, or sort of thoughts of that. And
Yeah, a little around if it made you feel the having him in that moment, and then I guess moving into life with him, did it make you feel the weight of what you were passing on, or the urgency of what you wanted to stop passing on, perhaps?
I think that's come with time. I think that's come as he's grown and got older. I think having a child is almost like having a mirror held up to you, and you start to see yourself in a way that you don't see. It's like if you have a partner, you see yourself in a way that they see. It's different, right? There's things that you have to sort of contend with, different to if you were by yourself. And I think a child does that to a larger extent. And because they're a child, there's consideration that you give them because they're not a fully flown adult who should be like able to deal with their own stuff, right? They're a child. So, yeah, I have had a lot of mirroring from my child and reflecting on my behavior and how it is as a result of what I've grown up with. So there are things that I most definitely have challenged in myself and continue to challenge. I don't get it right. I try. But, you know, I think we are really lucky to have a child who's quite articulate and will tell us in no uncertain terms when we're getting it wrong. And we've made it so that he has space to do that. We've created an atmosphere where he feels that he can say that, and we will listen and we will try our best to take into consideration what he's saying. I don't know that I had that same latitude when I was younger. And so that's definitely one of the things that I wanted to shift with him, is to give him his voice, to allow him to be heard, to allow him to speak, so he's not swallowing, so he's not holding, and that he can be fully expressive in who he is. And yeah, there's definitely things that I want to give to him that I received as well. So that sense of nurture and care was very present. And you know, it's something when you have a child, to be able to pour that into somebody has felt really, really amazing, and something that I feel people need more of, no matter what their age. And I think one of the things that I noticed about myself when I joined the course, we had quite a mixed bag of people's professional, what they were doing in their professional life. And I sort of rocked up with, I'm a mum, I do a bit of admin with my husband. I felt like, I don't have the same kind of, for a moment, I felt like that didn't have the same weight. And I was like, what are you talking about? You know, why are you saying these things to yourself? And it talks to the kind of patriarchy, the things that you were just saying previously, that there's no value in that. You know, it's like, why am I questioning the value of motherhood? This is everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like the fact that I can give of myself to this child, and then in this other context, I could give of myself to others, then being a mum has allowed me to understand how I can do that, and how to sort of, like, as I said, pour into to him and pour into other people. I'm gonna stop there.
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable about that. Yeah, I'm recapping everything in my mind, and that seems like definitely a heavy journey you took on. And I'm so glad that it reached where it has today. 12 years old from what I'm gathering. Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful. One thing you said about a child being your mirror, I'm curious if you've seen him do something, and like a moment, it doesn't have to be a big dramatic one, just a quiet one. If you've seen your child do something and felt it in your own body, like a recognition, grief, joy, anything at the same time.
I think one of the biggest things is this idea of being shut down, and noticing if there is a moment that I do that to him without intention. So he might be saying something, but I will be like, no, you've got, listen to what I'm saying, because blah, 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 blah. But actually, why should he? Do you know what I mean? He has as much right. He's of equal weight in the conversation. So why would what I have to say supersede what he has to say? And I think that's a thing that I've inherited, but it's something I don't want to pass on. But it's mirrored back to me, in these moments where we return to our default, when the trying version of ourselves slips away because maybe we're tired or stressed or whatever, and we return to our default, then in those moments we can, or I should speak about myself, I can slip into this mode, and I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not who I want to be. It's not how I want to show up for him. But he mirrors it. I will see either in his face, or he will tell me. And then I will see that thing, and I'll just be like, oh my God, this is the exact thing that I just do not want to do. This is not what I want to give him. And so that's just, it's like a mirror ball. There's lots of tiny mirrors. There's lots of tiny mirrors that he's showing me all the time. That's one of them. But it's one of the ones that weighs heavy with me, because I think it's what I've felt in my body, that feeling of being shut down, or that feeling where you can't say your truth in certain circumstances. And that might be in the home, but it's also about being in school. It's also about being in, the workplace, or in interactions, or being in the doctor's office, and the doctor's trying to shut you down, especially as a woman of color. It happened to me even the other day. And the worst thing was, she was a doctor of color as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, what are you doing? Why is this happening? Crazy. So voice is really important, and it's one that I am trying to do better with.
Yeah, hang in there. I hear they're really tough in their teenage, but hang in there. One thing you just said about, that she also was a doctor who was a woman of color, and I hear you. This happens many times. I have found myself, though, try to find a little more grace for those moments, because as a woman, I know I have been more impacted many times by patriarchy than the man next to me sometimes has. Not to say that he's doing smarter things than me. I don't think that's a rational reality, but um, it there was an instance some months ago where a friend of mine was talking to me and telling me about something that happened at work. And he said, this is what this woman said to another woman. And imagine she, being a woman, made this comment. And I think my first feeling about that was, hey, why is she being measured on a different pedestal, sorry, a different scale than you're measuring anyone else on? She's just as impacted by the same system of power that you're impacted by. That doesn't make her more wrong than you in any scenario. So I feel like the one thing this work is also doing for me is helping me find a little bit compassion for that moment when we really, really want to connect with this person because there's so much common between us. And it's also that moment where I realize, but hey, we're all on our journeys. And I don't know if this person's ever going to be on the same plane as me. But in that moment, the fact that you spoke up changes things. It changes everything. There is a chance now that she could be on that plane with you in the future sometime. So I'm really happy that that's how that interaction went. And if we're not going to meet people who also need that space for healing, uh, who can be brought into that healing with us, then this work wouldn't even be needed. So I feel like it's great that you came across someone who could be impacted. Yeah.
And I think like in that scenario, and you talk about grace, and compassion for others. I don't know what her experiences are. I don't know what she's had to contend with. She's a doctor, she's in a medical profession. She is going to be impacted by all of these systems like constantly. And she has to function within that, and she's got her quota to get through. Da 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 da. I just happen to be one person that's just gone into her office for whatever. And so I think what you said about having more grace and compassion is so key here. And it's a really good reminder. It's a reminder for me to not only, having grace and compassion for others, but also for myself or, my son or, the things that the edges that we meet in these various exchanges. Can we meet them with that compassion and that kind of grace? Not always, I have found, because I'm just me, but just more times than not is a good start, So, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are going to be moments of anger, of irritation, of even uproar from that anger. And I imagine we have to welcome them because they have to move through us, all of those emotions. None of them is lesser than the other or more than the other. Now that we're getting closer to start talking about healing, I would love to first talk about the weight in our actual bodies. I feel that a lot of these concepts and frameworks, when they get talked about outside of decolonial healing, they get spoken in terms of words and analyzing feelings and intellectualizing feelings. But at the end of it, it's all being felt here first. So, from the best of your memory, I'm curious, how did colonial history first show up and announce itself in your physical body? If you can recall a moment, and please take your time with it, there's no hurry.
This is such an excellent question. And the thing that comes to me is not a specific moment, but yeah, a definite feeling of that feeling of that dropping out feeling. Or like if you go over a hill or if you're on a roller coaster, that bit where you go down and your stomach drops. That's a feeling that comes when I think of moments or interactions where that kind of framework has been speaking really loudly, that kind of nervous energy ball. And then again, back to that voice thing, that suppression and that holding of what you want to say versus what you say, or what you wish you would have said after the fact. And that gets trapped. So there's definitely like around the throat area, a tension and an ache almost. That I would associate with that. Those are the two areas in my body that I would say.
Right. So the throat is what I'm understanding, and the dropping out at large of just presence. Yeah. It's I've thought about this often, how our voice actually is such a huge part of the puzzle. And because we're talking all the time, really, no one really remembers that it's actually not your true essence talking. It's just language speaking, and it's not really you. It's an interesting journey. It's been interesting so far in the 6 months of the course, for sure.
It's a lot on the course, and I think it gets you to really dig deep. And so I guess what I was thinking, I'm curious to know when you experienced that. Yeah, I'm just gonna put it right back on you. Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think why I caught on to the voice is because that's kind of where I have felt it show up the most as well. Not tracking to the first moment, but there were multiple moments along the way where I kept questioning why, when I spoke in this moment to somebody, why did I forget myself? Why did I forget caring for myself? I offered so much in that space, but none of it was for me. None of that offering was for myself. And I think those were moments that kind of built up things for me to get me to a place where I was like, okay, empathy, being present, all of that is essentially baseless if it's not coming for myself first. And yeah, I think it made me want to question my journey because I hadn't for a very long time. I had a generically comfortable childhood, and then when that happens, you grow up and there's all this pain inside you, and you don't know where it's coming from because you had a generically happy childhood. And even when you go to therapy, that's what they tell you. And like talk therapy, whenever I did that, that is all that came up. And then I was like, hey, but why is there pain then? And a lot of that for me then showed up in these spaces of intergenerational trauma and lineage, which has been getting addressed now over the last 6 months. And sometime before that, while I kept trying to figure it out on my own. But my voice, definitely. I had been a public speaker all my life growing up, and suddenly, as an adult, I had seemed to stop wanting to express my opinion loudly because I had been told too many times that I'm loud. So I think that constriction in the throat is very real for me as well. And this is not just because I'm trying to take on from your answer. I think it really is where it was sitting for me, and all the context should help with, yeah.
I think even in the groups that I've worked with, that is a really we're not alone in this. You know, it's an area that is, so many of us are silenced in different ways. So many of us are holding back our true essence, our true selves. We are sometimes catering to the needs of others before ourselves in order to fit in or to adjust, to make the situation a bit more easeful for somebody else, because it's never easeful for us when we do this, right? It's hard. It's hard to confront these things. And I think the course for me as well has helped me meet some of those things that have been quite confronting in a way that I have intentionally or unintentionally avoided in the past, you know? And it starts with letting the voice out, to let yourself out rather than this version that presents itself. You know, it'd be easy to continue with that version, but it's not true to who we are and what makes us us, you know, and what the history and everything, the lineage, the depth of who we are is condensed when we're, or I should say speak to myself, but like when I don't speak, you know, it doesn't allow the fullness of who I am to be present.
Yeah, carrying fullness as a woman it's been such a challenge. I won't, yeah, I can't deny that at all. And even when I was interviewing for the course with Hannah, I remember how my race and color were not such a big highlight for me at that moment. I'm a brown person who's lived in my country, in my city, not in my city, but in my country my whole life. Um, so, except those moments when I'm traveling, or of course, the impact of the political world and how these powers show up in my day to day when I'm facing people, a lot of that didn't show up. But my identity of a woman showed up every second, every day. And also coming from the country I come from, it showed up even more hugely because there's such gross disrespect to the gender. I know everywhere in the world, but it's extremely heavy in some of the places I've lived in. Some of the cities I've lived in are the highest violence against women numbers in the world. We're neighbors with some of the countries where these regimes and systems are still in place. And that identity showed up very hugely for me. So that expression of facing your fullness as a woman, I think that's something I'm still struggling with. Even moments where I feel like I'm being my most full self, I look around and there are a few women, thankfully, especially. This is the one thing I think we were bitching on Instagram earlier, but I feel like this is the one thing I genuinely do enjoy about it. The amount of freedom I have seen women express on that platform helps me get through a lot of my days. It really, really inspires me. It helps me, even if I'm not, inspires me to do nothing sometimes. I'm doing nothing with it sometimes, but it gives me joy that I am not as open as this, but I see fullness in her at least, which means some of us are getting there now. Then, of course, Instagram has its own things around censorship, but I'm not going to get into the politics of that just yet. Um, yeah, that's a huge point. And I imagine expressing our fullness as gender and then as a person of color, each of those structures, and then moving into so many realms of the power and privilege circle that we've studied in the course as well, our social location mapping, each of those would come up pretty much in the same way, right? It reduces our voice. It makes us be a smaller version of ourselves. Yeah, that's a big one. So I'm it does feel nice to hear right now when you said that it has come up a lot in a lot of the sessions you've also hosted. And it's interesting to see how it's all of us, most of us, and it's not just me or just you. I did kind of feel a little encouraging right now, honestly. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. And I think that's part of it, though, isn't it? It was like so much of our lives as they stand right now, for a lot of people, I can't speak to everyone, but we're so living in these kind of pockets, quite isolated. So when we're able to like see things like on Instagram, where we can see some resonance with perhaps the experience of somebody else, and we can be in spaces where we can feel the resonance of others in that space and that collectivity, and those shared kind of shared or mirrored histories and experiences. I think that does something really really quite unique and special, because it kind of is making me think. Sorry, I'm just stuttering a little bit, because it's making me think about the breath again as that resource, but that collectivity as that resource as well. And even if that connection to that collectivity is, albeit online through Instagram and what have you, but you can see yourself in somebody else, or you can see a version of yourself, or you can see a strand or a thread of this kind of where you're at now, where you'd like it to point to. And as you move through your own self-exploration, I mean, what a time, right? Like, what an amazing thing that is, so that we're not all just sitting in these silos and everybody individually having all this kind of all these feelings, holding all this weight and these sensation, these feelings in the body, without knowing that actually somebody else is probably sharing the same experience, or something akin to what I'm going through. So yeah.
While we're on this topic, I would love to bring up this question that has been alive for me. I feel as though spirituality is often sold in the wellness structure as an individual pursuit. But in BIPOC traditions, healing is a community frequency. So I'm curious, how do you feel the nervous system of the community when you're in a room of people breathing together? And you've said this before, of course, that it feels you all felt lighter when you left that room at the end of it. But I suppose I'm trying to understand how that nervous system of the community feels. How do you distinguish between that nervous system regulation and a spiritual visitation? Has it ever happened that you felt your ancestors breathing with you or through you?
So, so yes, and yes, and yes. So, if I think to the group session that I have been facilitating locally, there's something about coherence, like when everyone starts to breathe and that breath starts to become in sync. I don't know how that stuff happens, it just does. And in that, sometimes it attunes you too. So it becomes like a web. I don't know. I don't know if this is, I don't know if like old time breath workers are going to be listening and thinking, what's she talking about? But for me, this is how I experience it, right? Like, we have 8 women. I'm the 9th person in the room. And it all starts off feeling very individual. People come in with their own energies and their own whatever they're holding. And then all of a sudden, when we get into it and we start the dialogue and we start to begin the breath, those individual energies start to melt away a little bit, actually. And it becomes something that's more coherent. It's something that becomes like a whole energetic presence. And I'm also part of that. And I think that's something very unique. And it, again, that blows me away every time, because like, how does that even happen? But it happens because it's meant to happen. That's how we're meant to exist, right? And so you asked me about the idea, have I ever experienced spirit in a session? I think one of the biggest experiences that I had with that was actually in our immersion. I had created this off the back of be feeling unrooted and wanting to find a way back to myself. I started doing some kind of a little bit of history searching, photographs, looking through old family bits and bobs. And in a former life, I used to be like a creative practitioner / artist. And I wanted to create a situation where the breath work could be in an immersive experience beyond, so not just the breath work, but there was an experience that was holding it all together. So I created this little video. And so I asked everybody to watch the video. So we watched it together. We had our anchors. We had some anchors to hold, some rocks and a bay leaf, actually. And those were chosen because the bay leaf was something that many cultures use. And so it could bring us together in that, and you could smell it. And it was very reminiscent for people of grandma's cooking, or, there's something very kind of nostalgic in that smell. And I had collected rocks on the beach. And one of the things that was interesting about that is that they were witness to things over hundreds of thousands of years, right? So you've got something that's holding you, that's seen everything everything we've been through. This pebble, this stone, this rock has seen it before. So the people that were breathing had these two anchors, and then they watched the video, which was a lot of my family photos, and there was quite an evocative soundtrack to it. And then we went into the breath work. And the first time I did it was with my cohort, Hannah. And I was just crying. I was crying through it. I was just crying. And if you know me, I don't cry that much. That's another conversation about why I don't cry that much, but I don't cry that much. But that just, everything was coming out. And I remember one of the guys in our cohort at one point, he kind of, I think he stood up. And after the session, he said, I felt like there were so many people in the room that I had to move myself to make space for everybody that was here. And I felt that too. It felt thick. It felt like all of the people that were behind me were there. All of the people were holding that space. It wasn't me. Everything was coming through me. And there was definitely a feeling for me of connection, and very much a full circle, because I called it the untethered breath because I had felt untethered. But in that moment when I was feeling that presence, I retethered to them as well. And that was very special. It's something I will never forget. And yeah, it stays with me. So yeah, and whenever I hear that song that's on that, the track that's on that video, it takes me back there as well.
I felt like I was a little bit there in that experience. I mean, I wanted to be anyway, because I have a sense of how those experiences can feel, not at all what that exact experience was for you and everybody in the room. But yeah, I think I look forward to those transcendent experiences that come with a lot of these healing practices. I'm so happy that so many people could receive that through you, that you could receive it through your ancestors. It's a beautiful space to hold. And thanks for sharing it.
Again, You're so welcome. It was incredibly powerful. Again and again, it reaffirmed to me the power of breath, because we were just breathing. And I say just, like that's a small thing, but it blows my mind. It blows my mind every time. It's like, how, how how is this possible? How is this possible? And how is everybody feeling what I'm feeling? But it's that interconnectedness, and that I believe that it's because that's how we're supposed to interact as humans, as people, as kin, as a species, and that everything that we're doing currently is kind of like counter that. So when we have these opportunities to get back to ways of being that is innate, then our bodies are almost primed and ready to go with it, because it's what is in the DNA.
I hear you and I agree. Yeah. We, transitioning into another space, we talk about softness in the wellness world as we've known it so far, as if it's a choice everyone has access to. But for many of our ancestors, softness was actually a liability. It was a luxury they couldn't afford because they were busy surviving. So I'm curious, Nicola, when you look at your own lineage, where do you see that hardness that was necessary for survival, the armor that kept them alive? And and today, how does it feel in your ribs when through breathwork and other healing practices you try to let that armor go? Where does that resistance live inside you?
I think I see it in myself. I think I still carry that. And like I said, just, I don't really, I mean, I cry, but I don't cry. There's a lot of holding again, and that suppression, and that feeling of pushing things down. So just keep carrying on, and to show a kind of strong exterior. And so it's very much my reality now also. And I think that is definitely a retention of that lineage and ancestry, and how people and my family have survived through the generations. And it's something that I am trying hard to stop with me. Again, don't always get these things right, but my son is so expressive in a way that I never have been. And that's part of his personality, but also because we are trying to make space for him to be so. What was I've lost the second part of your question. So sorry.
The second part was how it feels in your ribs today through breathwork and all of these healing practices when you try to let it go, and where does that resistance still live inside you?
So yeah, through breath work, it's little by little, little by little. And I think what it has given me is the opportunity to see that about myself through the different explorations, and also to explore it a little bit. And the curiosity of why it's there, how it's there, and when it shows up. And where does it live in my ribs? Or does it still live in it very much lives in me, but I feel with each practice, with each little bit, with each kind of reminder, with each interaction, with each session that I attend or I facilitate, there is an opportunity to just chip away at that a little bit more. And so hopefully with each breath, moving towards that softness. And it's interesting that you've raised this I was having a conversation with friends yesterday, the sister of a friend, a very dear friend of mine, who I met for the first time yesterday. And she was talking, she's 60, and she was talking about moving into her softness now. And so it takes time, it takes time. First of all, we have to recognize where we're at, and then it takes time to chip away, and also to find the resources that can support us to get there. And for me, breathwork has been like fundamental in my journey to even recognizing where softness could exist. I have it for my son, but I don't have it for myself. I have it I have it in certain pockets, but it's not extended everywhere. And so that knowing and that recognition has come through these practices. And also these practices have opened me up to what other things might be able to support that. So looking into other areas that might be able to, and different practices that might be able to expand on that further.
I love that there were, honest reflections about how it is a slow process and it happens little by little. There was I think in the last recording, in the last episode I did with someone from my cohort called Katie. Katie and I also spent some time talking about exactly this, how, a lot of this is going to feel shitty. It is going to bother and hurt and disturb so much inside us. But at least we know what's on the other side of this. So it's better we do it for this process instead of the systems that we know don't work for us already. So as a practitioner, when you lead a breathwork session, how do you distinguish between, say, personal stress, which could be a deadline, a traffic jam, or a historical burden? For anyone listening, I want to explore basically how the breath can act as a shovel, helping us dig down to metabolize what our grandmothers had to swallow just to keep their family safe. But now, how does that breath become a way of getting underneath the personal story and into the historical one?
I'm going to try to answer that, but I might come back to you for a bit more clarity on that one. How do I distinguish between a personal and historical thing in when I'm leading breathwork? For the participants, I think having a space where there is time and where that sense of urgency is removed, where there is no, when I, and as this is in my learning from Hannah and during this is about this reassurance that there's no judgment here. There's no expectation here. There's when you can actually just voice that and give people permission to just let go of these things in this moment, and that they can do with them what they will when the session's done. But just for this moment, can you give yourself permission to let go of this expectation, of this judgment? Can you accept this rest? Can you accept this breath? Can you allow yourself to be present? And I think when you put all of these things into the mixing bowl, if you like, it creates a situation where for a moment, somebody's able to begin to look beneath the layer of the everyday and to sort of slip. It's almost like, I just got this, I'm a very visual person, but this idea of like oil on water, right? So the oil is the everyday and the water is the depths of who we are. So it's just like when we can just put our finger in the oil and just dip and see that actually there's something that's not oil beneath this and it's all just floating on the top. And actually, I feel like the breath is the water, and it allows us access into the waters. And so we're not just floating in our busyness of the everyday, busyness of the mind, and we can begin to listen, and we can begin to hear ourselves, and we can begin to let our own voice. I liked that you said earlier about we talk words and language, but it's not who we are. It's not necessarily what we have to say. So it's about like using the breath as a vehicle or a route to hear ourselves. I mean, how amazing is that you get to hear yourself and, really tap into who and where you are and what you are, and what you might need, actually, and what you might need to remind yourself of. Because I think sometimes we know who we are, but it gets buried under everything, and we just exist in the oil, and it's hard to get past that. So I think yeah, I think that. I think that.
Yeah, that was a beautiful analogy. I I was fully taken aback by that. Um, yeah, because that's so beautiful. We all so many times talk about how, I am the sea and I want to be like the sea. And there are so many um, parallels we can draw with nature where we can be different forms of ourselves through one element of nature. And the sea is such a huge one that we all relate to as human beings. And then for you to have put it that way, that our daily pieces are just the oil on top, and then underneath all of that is just a sea of water, which is us. That was really beautiful. Genuinely made me understand everything you were saying within a second. That was lovely. And definitely have a thing for succinct sentences and analogies, and that super did it for me. Yeah. On the succinctness of words, there's something in the word remember that I keep coming back to, which we've discussed even in our course with Hannah. I imagine it came up in your cohort as well, and it does often in these practices. Breaking down the word as remember to put the body back together, because coloniality works by dismembering, cutting us off from our land, from lineage, from language, sometimes from sensations in our own skin. I'm curious, in your practice, what does it look like to breathe into the numb places, to find a part of a woman's body that has been quiet for generations and then give it permission to speak? What does it look like for the participants? Something that they might have shared, something you've experienced through them.
I think I spent most of my course in a state of numbness, and the breathing. I think when we started breathing together and Hannah was breathing us, there were lots of things that were coming in and coming and going. And then I reached this point and I called it the void. That's how I used to reference it, the void. Because for me, when I breathe, I get to this space of darkness, and it's quite beautiful in there. I quite enjoy being in that space. It's quite quiet. I quite like that. But within that, sometimes there was numbness. There was nothing. I was feeling nothing. There was nothing. I was just like, what is it? But I remember Hannah saying to me, numbness is also a sensation, and it's a feeling, and it's something to acknowledge, and it's something to be aware of. And so when somebody might express they feel numbness, then they are still feeling, because it's not the absence of feeling. It's just a different type of feeling, right? And so, yeah, I think I've lost the thread a little bit of what you were saying, but but I think this idea of numbness is also a feeling. It's also a sensation. It's also an emotion, and that's relevant. And I think for so many women of color, that is an overarching sensation because they've had to shut so much down. We come back to this idea of the voice. We come back to this idea of suppression, fitting ourselves in and shutting ourselves off in different ways. And whilst the dismemberment was perhaps for generations previously, we do it to ourselves in these different ways to survive in the systems in which we're living in. And so I think, again, it's a slow process to breathe into that and to understand that it's there because it was protecting us, and it was protecting so many different aspects of who we are, vulnerability and that softness that we haven't been able to show, and fear and just all the things, right? So this numbness is actually a protector, and can we look at it from that angle rather than, oh, it's negative because I can't feel it, I can't experience this, or I can't experience that because of this numbness. But actually this numbness is actually doing its own work, and it's been doing it to keep you safe and to keep you in the best way it can, to keep you surviving however you can. Yeah, I hope that answered what you were saying.
Yeah, it's the bit about having no sensation is also a sensation. Yeah, I always come back to that actually, because I do realize what you're saying. There is so many points in our life where no sensation is just how we're operating for long periods of time, and it might not even look like dissociating because it's still you. You are here. You're just not feeling so much. And those can be skill sets many times because there is just so much to hold that you I need to just take a beat sometimes. And we get to a little bit because anyone doing the work of resistance must also do the work of pausing and allowing no sensation to be the only sensation, is my understanding of how, I suppose, a lot of these practices become political for me. On that note, I am curious how, I mean, this is something I was thinking about while I was trying to, figure out this conversation that will happen between us. Um, with whatever little context again I had, we have focused just as a people, we focus so much on the hard work of activism. But then my understanding is that sometimes the most radical act of systemic change, especially in this case, is a woman in a state of deep unregulated rest. To add to that, in our case, women of color. Um, So I'm curious how you feel your breathwork practice shifts sometimes from self-care to a political disruption. It could be the smallest ways that you think of that in, but I'm just curious to know your take on it.
I think it's all an act of, it's all political. I think that this kind of the idea of the mother as a concept, right, is about radical care. This idea of creating pause through, through breath work is about radical rest, like deep rest. like into the bones rest, opposed to just not being tired. And for me, creating a space where that can happen, I'm giving women the opportunity to even get a small sense of what that might be like for them, is incredibly powerful, is an incredible political act, and it cuts through the understanding of what we've been living under. It cuts through the kind of I don't know. Again, a visual. It's just like a knife through butter, right? It's just, even if it's just a hot knife through butter, I should say, it's just, even if it's for a moment, that somebody can take pause. I think one of my ladies that was breathing here, she said, this session is the place that I get to rest. I can't even rest like this in my own house because there's always a demand, there's always something to do. And this sense of urgency isn't just about the workplace, it's this continuation, it's all the time, it's unending. I do it too, do you know what I mean? So when you can create a container that allows someone to come into a state of deep rest and care, the care of the holding of the group, the care of the just consideration of what they're stepping into, that is like a tiny cut into this crazy system that we are living under. And if each time someone did that, it's another tiny cut. I kind of feel like we get to the point of death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's like tiny cuts. And the inverse of that is that the person receiving that little bit of rest starts to build a little bit more capacity, starts to build a little bit, and not capacity to hold more stuff, but capacity to be with themselves. And for me, that's radical. That is really radical, and so necessary, and so important, actually. So yeah.
I think one of the biggest things I've learned about you today is that you make really kick-ass analogies of things. The hot knife with the butter. And yes, I know some of them are things we've heard before, but they're still, to have them with you in the moment is true embodiment. And I love that. Yeah. I also really, really loved this part you said about it allows you to build more capacity. And then the dichotomy of not to hold more stuff. Because truly, I think a lot of people in these spaces, even people in spaces of activism, struggle because of this reality where a lot of us believe, hey, I'm building more capacity, which means I can hold more. And that in itself is a capitalist mindset almost. And I guess it also goes to show how deeply it's ingrained that we're doing it even while we're trying to run away from it. But that was a nice moment for me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And the kind of insidious nature of how deep it goes is like beyond sometimes. And yes, you catch yourself doing it whilst you're trying to not do it. And the frustration that's there as well when you recognize what you're doing with it that completely goes against the thing that you're not supposed to be doing, right? But I think, again, it's that acknowledgement. For me, it's that acknowledgement of everything. To change something that is so deep, it takes time. And it's little by little. It's the tiny things. I was speaking to you in the pre-talk about my frustration with my seeds in my garden. But part of the garden and part of the allotment, that's my radical act to have food that I've grown that I can give to my family like we can sit and have a meal, and some of that food is food that I've grown. I know exactly what's gone into it. I know, well, as much as I can. I know what's there. I know what how it's grown. I've watched it develop. I've seen how long it takes to get from that tiny seed to this plate. And I think that's kind of another analogy for you is the same with this journey. It's like, I feel like I'm at the tiny seed stage and I want to get to the full mature plant, but it's going to take a lot of different iterations to get there, and it's all dependent on the circumstances, the environment that we're in, and did it rain, did it not, did sun come out, did it not, if we sort of move that into our life experiences and what that means, it's understandable that it's going to take time. It's understandable that we're going to get it wrong and that some things will fail and some things will succeed. So deep stuff, Suks, deep stuff.
There's, I love that you brought the garden in. I was hoping that it comes up in some way. There is a relational work specialist called Christabel, who she works towards relational repair and community, and she's a Black woman who's also has spent the last, I think, 25 years being a nurse, and now she teaches a lot of relational work and decolonial work. I think I will end up linking her down in the podcast notes as well. Yeah, she speaks about this thing actually, about how if you want to learn community, how to hold space in community, how to move into community, if that's not where you are today, build a garden for yourself. Start building a garden, start working in the garden, and that will teach you everything there is to know about how to be in community and how to show up for it and how to feel connected to your roots again, how to feel the how to let go of some of that coloniality actually, because when the more power you can have over providing for yourself, over your resources, is the farthest you will go in that process. Yeah, so I love that you brought that up and that your garden is doing well and that you're eating things from it.
Not quite yet, but hopefully soon. But whatever it is, even if it's just a small thing, it's the act of doing it, and it keeps me connected to that growing process in a very specific way. And actually, I found it a really therapeutic space for me, like as a real sort of when I'm feeling stress or any overwhelm or any kind of just having a really rough, crappy time. When I go there, it just shifts something. One, because I'm probably taking time for myself that's needed. I guess it's the pause again, right? It's just in a different way. And I used to take headphones to listen to stuff, to try and listen to some of the reading list I was supposed to be reading for the course. I had to stop because it didn't lend itself to that. It lent itself to pause and quiet. And you can hear the birds and you can hear insects and you can hear so much, and just being with yourself in that space, I think is kind of hinting at the space that I want to offer to others as well. It's just being with yourself in those quiet spaces. And so, yeah, so my breathwork practice is very quiet, I guess. It's not very it's not very dramatic or fast moving, but I feel like that's where I've observed women of color need to be held in order to be able to get beneath the oil. Yeah, if it's I can't imagine getting beneath the oil in a way that would feel sustainable and very high, fast moving, fast paced breath practice. I think that's serves a purpose for something else, and it doesn't serve the purpose for where I'm trying to meet people.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. We are nearing one of my last inquiries. Mm, and then, of course, there's space to share whatever else is coming up. Um, as it would be, we are all someone's future ancestor. And so, as we sit here processing all of these old weights, what our new breath is, what we're trying to encode for those who come after us, what is it that you are trying to encode for who come after you? If you could leave one sensation, one feeling of safety or spaciousness or whatever it is of descent in the marrow of your descendants, what would it be?
One thing, I think I would connect it to the conversation that we've been having and just to express, to be able to express, fully express, to fully voice who you are to the world and to show your fullness. I think if that was the legacy of me, I'd be happy with that. Yeah, I think I'd be happy with that because I think that that has been an ongoing things from my generations anyway, like especially the women, just shut some silencing and shut downness. So to be able to be open, to be full, to be true to your essence and who you are. Yeah, I think that's the one.
To be in your complete fullness. I love that. Yeah, I think that would be my biggest take from our session as well, to be full and have your voice and use it as much as you can when you can. Hmm. And before we close this chapter, first, I just want to give you some space to express anything that might be coming up for you right now.
I'm just really grateful to actually have had this conversation with you. It's really brought me back into some of the thinking that I was having during the course, and also really invigorated, like, or reinvigorated the direction which I want to go with the practice. And so, yeah, I'm really super grateful for that. I'm super like, yeah, this is radical shit. We gotta do this. We gotta do this. And yeah, like, yeah, even like the idea that it's just like a tiny nick, but actually, you know, you keep doing something and it hurts after a while. And
Yeah.
so, um, and so, yeah, thank you for having me here and for having this conversation. Your questions were amazing and really got me thinking deeply about where I'm at and what I'm doing and what has led me to this point and how I want to move forward. So thank you so much.
Nicola, thank you so much for the depth of this, for trusting the space with something, with so many things so alive and so personal, and for all the radical vulnerability, for helping everyone who will be listening to this trace the lines between the personal pulse and the historical heart, and to have that map that doesn't just show us where our wounds are, but also where the strength has always lived. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for bringing it back to the soft center, to the fullness. Yeah, it's been so great to know you, to get to know you through this conversation. And thank you for coming back at me with the tough questions that felt extremely vulnerable. And I was not expecting it, but I loved it. And I enjoyed the exchange so much. Yeah.
It's my absolute pleasure. And yeah, sometimes it's interesting to to give it back and see what comes back. I'm learning, and it was so wonderful to speak with you because I've learned a lot during our conversation, and I'm really excited to see how you shape this. And 'cause I know I spoke quite a lot. So
it was much needed.
Yeah,
It was much needed.
Looking forward to how you shape this, and hopefully it's helpful to someone somehow. Yeah,
That's definitely, I hope that as well, and I'm sure it will be.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Nicola. And to you listening, if your body feels heavy right now, let it be heavy. That weight is just your roots finding the soil. I want to now leave you with a voice that holds everything we've been sitting with today. Titilope Shonuga is a Nigerian-Canadian poet, writer, actor, and performance artist who was born in Lagos. She has taken the stage at festivals in Lagos, New York, Edmonton, and Toronto, among many others. Her first collection of poems, Down to Earth, won the 2011 Emerging Writer Award of the Canadian Authors Association. In 2015, she performed at the inauguration of Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari. And amongst her many other accolades and awards, she is the 9th Poet Laureate of the city of Edmonton. Her work is a bridge between worlds. She writes into the heart of the dichotomies, the abject poverty and the jaw-dropping mansions, the ancient art and the gridlock traffic. She reminds us that we come from empires that breathed long before the world knew how to name us. This is her poem titled From a Place. I come from a place where mothers go to battle each day, with a baby strapped across their backs and others still clinging from their breast, childcare at its finest. A place of street businessmen who don't need a white collar to make deals. They sign contracts with handshakes, shirtless, sometimes shoeless. They'll show you how to make money. You will find anything in these streets, from hubcaps to toilet seats. And it's been said, if you leave home naked, find yourself caught in the gridlock traffic of Lagos roads, they will have you dressed, boardroom sharp, briefcase in hand, between the mainland and the island. I come from a place of jaw-dropping mansions. And face me, I face you rooms where a child hawks goods in the blazing sun next to an air-conditioned Mercedes-Benz. There are dichotomies here. Abject poverty at the seams that bind us, but we are the same people who built a city on water, who bent fire and metal to give you art, built empires before the world's first breath. Check your textbooks. Better yet, check your encyclopedia. Read between the lines, you will find us there. You will find us everywhere. Every continent, every country, every climate, speaking Portuguese, French, Italian, they call us uncivilized. We'll show you how to perfectly pair your caviar and wine and still get down fingers deep in that plate-pounded yam. I come from a place where the world's best storytellers first spoke, who taught you must set forth at dawn. Be no longer at ease with that thing around your neck before things fall apart. So when you ask me where I'm from, there are things I want to tell you that are louder than my bright green passport. Things heavier than the failed explosive cradled in Mutalab's underpants. Things more colorful than a well-crafted 419 email. And you will never understand who I am until you know exactly where I come from. Such profound words. Every time I read one of these poems on one of these episodes, I'm left with so much to gather when I go to bed that night. And as I sit with these words today, with Titilopi's words, I think the lines that struck me most were, "You will never understand who I am until you know exactly where I come from." Our bodies aren't just holding trauma, they're holding empires, dichotomies, cities built on water. So when we breathe today, we're not just trying to relax, we're reclaiming something, honoring the storytellers who said, "Set forth at dawn." Our history is a living architecture, it's not a textbook. The path is not straight, it winds through the marketplace and the mansion, through grief and gold. It's really, the path is us. In the next episode, we get into the messy middle, when unlearning gets hard, when the old armor feels safer than the new skin. How do you keep breathing when the unlearning hurts? Until then, carry the weight of your origin with pride. It's louder than any passport out there. Find the Inspire Breathwork podcast wherever you listen. If something landed today, stay with us. Subscribe, share, take up space, be in your fullness. I'm Suks. I'll see you at the next dawn.